a society when they move away from just customs and the basic building blocks of a society and a community, and they create some new thing out of thin air, like University of Bologna. And apparently that was popular because now we have thousands of universities. So what you're seeing here is a site that is thought to be where the first Icelandic government was founded. And so that's sort of similar to the university situation where they had custom, they had a chief, etc., presumably, and one day they just decided that wasn't good enough. They were growing too fast, or they had certain challenges, and they needed a formal government. And this is actually called All Thing, or at least in English we call it the All Thing, and it literally translates to the thing or the assembly. So this is All Thing Field. This is where they think they established the first government. And I don't know if they had huts or what they had. Here's the All Thing today. It's a very small building for a small country, and still exists. But again, it's something that was created out of thin air. It didn't always exist, but I think it's the longest running government. And about the year 930 or 980 or somewhere around there. So about 150 years before the first university, actually. So the problem with social sciences is that all you can do is compare two countries, and this sometimes leads to some erroneous concepts like the Protestant work ethic. Okay, so I think that was Durkheim or Weber came up with this term. All right, so he invented this term, and it's actually very erroneous because it's correlation rather than causation. So I mean, the closest thing we can get to an experimental method is to look at homogeneous societies and see those that were split. So we can look at East and West Germany, where you have a common people, and then somebody, puts a wall or a fence down the middle of it, and what do you have 30 years later? You have two very different societies, as you do in this image with South Korea, right? So in the early 50s, South Korea was split in half, and prior to that, actually, the South was more agrarian. But what do you have today? You have the so-called communist totalitarian North, where people are starving, they're propagandized, and then you have the South, which is very prosperous materially, at least, and arguably decadent, but certainly wealthy in the material sense. And that's about the best we can do. I mean, and as far as an experimental method goes, that's as close as we can get. And in these cases, it's believed or inferred by the social scientists that it's the institutions that make the difference. This I can't remember the name of this town, but it's in Arizona. At least the northern half of it is. The whole town used to be part of Mexico, and so again, you have a homogeneous society. But then you put, a fence down the middle, and the North is much more prosperous than the South, and it's believed that this is because of the institutions, and in fact, the institutions developed in the United States versus the other Americas have a lot to do with the resources and the kind of economy, and so you had different institutions as a result, many of which are still existing today. So, and you might say, well, okay, well, you're wasting a lot of time talking about the economics approach. But I will mention that that is important to us because there's very good evidence that studying economics is how you understand where you get economic freedom, and the most economically free countries tend to be those which also have are freest in terms of civil liberties, and that means religious freedom. So the more economically free we are, actually, the more likely we are to have religious freedom. And so that is important. So it's an indirect relationship. So this is a point where we can start talking about this, we can brainstorm, and we can end here, or we can proceed after we brainstorm a little bit, and I can talk about my ideas, or I think are unusual ideas actually, about how we can, one way we might think about combating this. And if you want to give me your ideas on those as well before I proceed, I can do that. So we can talk, or I can push on. or we can end it here, whatever you want to do. So I'll make a second video, and then at that point we can, if we want to see part two, we can do that.